There are 600 local authorities in this country. At least half have approached us. We have 12 learning sites that we work with. You do the maths. Most places are not ready to take this on. Most cities just, they're at different stages, they're different agendas, they're different priorities. But what's exciting about here is that there seems to be a really good appetite for kind of figuring out how we can help people do what they do best, figuring out how we can do some co-production, and then having really good services alongside that. And that's not always the case. Typically in a lot of places there's a dominance of one or the other. So, if I had a hat, I'd take it off to you really, because it's quite uncommon. The end game is how we can have all of those things. So it's an all hands on deck approach. Why? Well, why not? So how do we do that? Well, one of the ways of doing that is getting serious about building that culture of community. And not always doing it just for SDS, because that's not the only outcome you'll get. But if you think about it, how many neighbourhoods, rich or poor, are actually being love-bombed by all kinds of professionals who are promoting little wedges of inclusion, but not the whole deal. All progress, I believe, in changing cities is as much about being clear about what you're not going to do as what you are going to do when it comes to growing health and social care from inside out, community up, citizen out. I think one of the things that's really important around SDS is that it cannot allow itself to be siloed. If it does, it will become irrelevant. It's got to start getting really, really serious about place, and it's got to start reaching out to other agendas that are about building community. Whether that's community safety or health or social care, it doesn't really much matter. In a way, it's got to get beyond those agendas, but also work with them. And I think two ways of doing that, in my mind anyway, are number one, getting serious about place. I think we are in a real problem at the moment. We're in a real sort of a tricky spot. I think we are pretty much almost all organized to just work with individual ailments, not even individuals, but individual ailments. Now, some of us, through our practice, are subverting that, and we're working with individuals. Sometimes we work with peer groups of individuals, and sometimes we'll work with families. But very, very rarely, I'm sure you're going to give me exceptions to this rule, and it'll be great if they're there, but very, very rarely are we working in a total place way. Now, my suggestion is I think we need to get more serious about that. It won't solve all problems, but it will open up a whole raft of new possibilities. One of the things that we're beginning to explore in different places in the UK is, why can't we have neighbourhood pool budgets, which enable the employment of people who are really gifted at working across agendas and working outside silos, but also are capable of remaining accountable to communities. So the things to pay attention to: working in place, thinking about neighbourhood pool budgets, finding, are there indigenous, or is it possible that we can pay for community builders who may not necessarily sit within our silos but may sit outside our silos, and then working around the connectors in local neighbourhoods so that we can begin to build that culture of community. That's what we're trying to do. If we do that, I think we'll change the shape of self-directed support. It'll actually become community-directed support. And actually shifting the ethos and the ethic away from me using my money to have a transaction with the marketplace and get more authentic and serious about creating islands of health where people can live and have a good life. Then I think we'll change the shape of our own services as well. So that to me is the prospect that ABCD offers. And sitting ABCD alongside person-centred care, which I know many of you are brilliant practitioners in, and a service that leads by stepping back, that doesn't jump in to fix all of the time, is actually what I think will change the city for the better. In other places around the country and beyond, in other countries, what has tended to work reasonably well is after a couple of days like this, if the energy is there, that what's loosely called a community of practice is convened. And that community of practice is tends to be a group of folk who are maybe from public sector, third sector and community who have a genuine heart for this agenda, understand the dilemmas and the challenges, and sort of see this 2-3 years down the line as something they want to continue to be involved in and invested in. Their other function is just to get practical. So where do the community builders come from? That's, a question that you might want to reflect on quite deeply. And begin to do your asset inventory around, So it's not just about pitching out of self-interest, but, where can we just begin to blur the line and find the existing resources when it comes to community building? Who's good at this? The second is, once we have the community builder, we'll find the connectors and do the rest of it. But I think the second thing to really think about is how do we engage with communities in a way that's not top-down or impositional? And a city the size of Aberdeen, you'd probably want to be thinking about working in maybe 3 or so neighbourhoods, and working at the neighbourhood level, not the ward level, right? Working at the level of place that people define. Where are the neighbourhoods that have a welcome for this, that have a real heart for weaving the community, that isn't sort of shut down into being a grant-dependent community, but really thinks, well, we've got assets, and they're not just, dominated by single-issue people, but they're people who genuinely want to grow the spirit of the community again. And they're there, and they're in every community, but I suppose the question is, are there communities that are particularly warm to this? And don't get too worried about how rich or poor they are. We don't have to do a deficit analysis, because there's all sorts of levels of poverty and challenge. But where is their energy for this? A lot of people ask me, how do we select a community? You don't. You choose communities in the same way you choose a puppy from a litter. You pick the one that comes to you.